Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. Hope you enjoy. If this doesn't work, I'm going to be too mad to attend your funeral. Written by In Babylon They Wept. It was a slow-motion disaster. A hive ship had appeared just half a system away. There was an asteroid belt within that region. Odds were good that the craft had been there before the research station was even built. The living crafts could hibernate for hundreds of eons or solar alone. There were defenses on the station, of course, but they were made to repel pirates and raiders, not bio-organic warships. The best bet would be to bail on the station and outrun the craft with the rapid escape shuttles. Whatever strengths the hive ships had, they were at least painfully slow. Unfortunately, the escape vectors were not looking good. Slow as the hive ships were, they could accelerate massively in short bursts before depleting their boosters. Even if their peak speed was just under half the escape ships, the shuttles would never have time to reach it. Ion thrusters were a long-haul type investment, theoretically perfect for the station in deep space, less than ideal when the monster everyone's afraid of turns out to be stashed in the attic. Valros and Brishinj were eyeing those shuttles nervously. Never knew much about their construction, but Earl and Shiloh told them that they needed to cut as much dead weight as possibly could. Then they left. Those two apparently had a plan. Brishinj didn't need a plan. He had a plasma cutter. Live or die, he was going to do what he loved. The cutter flared blue-green as Brishinj gave its intensity trigger an experimental squeeze. "Fuck seats!" Val clicked his pincers together, menacingly back. "And Feck upholstery." Shiloh was poring through the blueprints of the station. Most of it was Greek to him. He didn't do structural work, but the electrical numbers were starting to paint a picture for him of just how much power he could funnel into the station's ion thrusters. It was a lot. He didn't know if they had some arcane purpose in mind, or if it was just a good luck on his part, but the main power conduit connected directly to each thruster. He didn't have to worry about slagging another connector cabling. Sky was the limit when it came to the turbocharging those bad boys. He passed on the good news to Earl. "They're clear on the thrusters. The reactors would go critical long before the cabling failed. How are your numbers coming up? How fast can this thing spin before it pulls itself apart?" Earl picked nervously at his stubby chin. He wished that he had time to shave. Only thing worse than dying was dying scruffy. "Best case scenario is around 120 RPM. Worst case is 80. If we can leave within the next 27 minutes, we won't have to risk going above that. There's just one problem." "What is it?" "The airlocks can't hold the ships from the outside if we rotate that fast. We're going to have to start them out inside." Shiloh made contact with Earl and saw the horrified look in his face. Ah, so they were thinking of the same solution, at least. Steam rose off of Val's body in the billowing clouds, the orange light of the emergency alarm scattering through them like tongues of flame. He picked another chair from inside the craft, connectors still glowing orange from the plasma cuts, and tossed it casually across the full length of the deck. Brishinj stared. He may have developed a slight, barely noticeable infatuation. "That's hot!" "Okay, well, maybe a little bit more noticeable." "If you're staring at my ass, I'm gonna pinch you in half." Bell rolled his eyes, but smiled easily enough. "Anything you can think of. We've removed the upholstery, the chairs, the lighting, and the dash." "How much weight gone?" "About 20%. Brishinj rapped his knuckles against the side of the craft, deep in thought. Finally he reached a conclusion. "This isn't working." Then the intercom crackled to life. Earl tapped the mic a few times to see if it was working. "Stop that! Stasis!" Ah, apparently it was. "Station's going to huck the spacecraft out like stones from a sling." There was a pause on the other side as Brishinj digested this plan. "Sounds dumb. How's scrapping those shuttles working for you?" There was another pause. "Good point." "Thought so. Shiloh's on his way. He has the details. Small spoiler. We're going to love this. It involves breaching charges." Earl was right. This was fantastic. Stupid as hell, but everyone here had wasted their lives being smart. Live smart, die dumb. If there was a tattoo parlor on board, Brisinge would have gotten that on his forehead. Hell, if he survived this, that was the first thing on his bucket list. Bell had stuck with it, but looking at it from his raised position on the crane, he was starting to have second thoughts. So, how sure are you that the charges are just going to weaken the ground wall, enough for the vacuum to rip it off? Shiloh grunted. I'm 100% sure that part'll work. We went way overboard on the charges. Vector timing was the hard part, but Earl says he's got some way to time the pulse by choosing which solar cells is going to divert power from. I'm just hoping we got the lift high enough that we'll make it through the blast, okay? Shrapnel is the wild card here. Val twiddled his antennae. And how is Earl gonna make it out of here? He said he had a plan to make those thrusters turn on slowly. His plan was to hit the power, then race down here before the G-forces got too high for him to move. Apparently, Neo-Tallahassee was at 1.4 Gs. He's better at handling this than you'd expect. So maybe Earl had told a little lie. He wasn't planning on going down with the ship, but he knew damn well that there was no way to raise gravity slowly enough to make it to the escaped craft before collapsing. So he wasn't going to do that. He had a little Hail Mary in mind, but it sounded so absurdly stupid that he was pretty sure that Shiloh wouldn't have insisted on doing it himself. Gambling like this was only suicide if you weren't lucky. Earl was supremely lucky. He checked the timer, 11 minutes left. He was debating hitting the comm and checking in on them when it crackled to life on its own accord. The occasional odd pause gave the speaker away as well. Earl! We got the charges in, and the station's been loaded into the ships. I'm crammed in here with all the marketing division. Please tell me that we're ready to dance. He wasn't, but if they waited for him to be emotionally prepared for this, they'd be half digested in the hive ship before he was even close. If there was ever a time to put on a brave face, this was it. He took a deep breath then, steeled his nerves, and called in response. I tell you to put on your blue suedes, but you'd need a month's pay to get this set for each of your creepy little crab feet. It's go time! He punched in the fastest RPM he felt safe with, 79. There was a pause as the station digested this somewhat insane request. Warnings obscured the screen in layers that he peeled through in like an onion. As he hit the last manual override, there was a brief pause as the station processed that the request was not an error. He could almost imagine some little gremlin peering back at him from the screen, confused, but loyal enough to say, Okay, boss, if you say so. The reactor flooded. He could feel the rumble of its turbine as it tripled its power output, amazingly still below 60% of its maximum. There was almost no delay between the power spike and the ion thruster's torque. There was an agonizing groan throughout the station as the torque strained everything, from the steel bolts between the modules of the donut to the tensile strength of the walls themselves. Then the craft began to spin. As the G-meter climbed past 1.9, Shiloh got nervous. Once it hit 2.5, he panicked. No, are you going to make it? You better be conscious, you. The voice that came in on the other end of the comm was very much conscious, even nonchalant. I'm not out of the control room. Gravity near the middle of the hub is almost non-existent. I'm not even at 1G yet. Shiloh paused to consider this. 2.6. You're going down with the ship? No? 2.7. Well, maybe. 2.8. Not if I can help it. There's no time to explain. Just trust me when I say that I'm not planning on being a martyr. 3. Hold on. 4. 6. And then Shiloh blacked out. Earl was surprised that the little man had held on so long. Shiloh was tougher than he looked. The G-meter kept climbing after 6, maxing out at 9. Earl wasn't a doctor. He didn't know what the consequence of being out for more than 20 seconds like that was, but he didn't want to push it any more than he needed to. Brisinge had made the detonators by connecting a wire from the light bulb sockets to the chargers. All Earl needed to do to blow open the hull was turn on the light. Bell's hydraulic musculature let his whole body act as a heart. 9 Gs was far too much for him to support his own size, but it wasn't enough to knock him out. He was terrifyingly, horrifically, beautifully awake. The room flashed white as the charges went off. each one slagging a 6-foot radius of hull. The edges of each crate glowed white for a fraction of a second before, exposed to the hard vacuum of space, dulled them orange. The magnetic seals holding the craft to its crane disconnected, each massive ship falling 10 feet in 9G environment, and the entire ground plate gave way with ease, barely slowing the impact, and the room exploded apart as the pressurized atmosphere expanded to fill the cosmic void. Earl's vantage point didn't let him see much. The direct outer wall of his station was the biggest blind spot. All he could do was count down and pray that his friends were okay. It took almost half a minute, but Val came in first. Nothing more complicated than a simple radio broadcast. No deaths. The tension cut immediately, anxiety alchemizing into glee. Earl's shoulders didn't even have time to fall before Val continued his update. Couple of broken bones, but nothing that won't be fixed once we take it to the outpost stratum. A wrench put through some of the side of my craft, but it bounced off my shell, so thank the gods. Worst part of that was the panic everyone had before Brasinged managed to slap some plasteel over the hull. We've got enough oxygen in here to make it to the outpost Kronos, twice and back. Earl waited to see if more was going to be added. He only had a receiver here. No transmitter mic wasn't designed to work in anything but the station. But he desperately wanted to assure them that he was okay, that this was all going to be okay. The pause stretched on almost a minute before Shiloh's voice called in one last message, his accent harsher with the intensity of the emotion. Be careful out there, dumbass. If this doesn't work, I'm going to be too mad to attend your funeral. We've been looking out for you since day one. You can't leave us out of the loop like this. Earl winced. He knew the other man couldn't hear it, but he couldn't help a little whisper that escaped his lips in the silence of the control room. I'm sorry. I hope this works too. End of story. I would quickly like to thank our Tier 5 patrons and channel members: Casper Arnholt, Cam Maxwell, it's difficult to pronounce, Lord Arishakal, Dragzoon, WRE, and Arcadian. Thank you very much.